And so one of the problems I had being a stay-at-home dad was just not feeling like I was doing enough. Like I had to get out and farm something or build something, or in addition to taking care of the kids. That's actually a kind of a male thing I've noticed with the men that I talk to. That's the real gap for them, is that, like, I'm thinking I'm supposed to be doing something else,
Right.
in
Yeah.
addition to taking care of the kids. And so I really started homeschooling as sort of a therapy for me, and also as a sort of a preventative measure for my kids, based on what I was seeing in the public school system.
Sure.
And so, it was a 1 year at a time thing back then. There was a conviction for us to do it, but there was definitely, you know, I, I wasn't sure how it was going to work out because I'm a guy, and
Okay.
I could see right away I was going to be lonely in this job,
Yeah.
right? But every year it got a little better, and I mean, I wouldn't do it any other way now. So
All right, everybody. So today I have Rob James with us, and he is the homeschooling dad, which is a little bit different, I know, but you go by the Circus Dad on Instagram, right, Rob?
yeah, circus dad.
Circus Dad, which I totally get that. But so just wanted to kind of talk to Rob today and get him to explain what he's doing, how it feels different to be a homeschool dad. I know, but I think a lot of our audience doesn't maybe necessarily know about homeschooling as a dad, or hasn't even kind of thought about that concept. I think with COVID and everything we've got going now, Rob, it's more people are thinking, hey, maybe I should get involved with my kids or take it on completely. So I think, to start with, why don't you kind of just give us a quick intro as how you got started being the circus dad?
Yeah, so this is our 10th year homeschooling now this year. Before that, I was a stay at home dad, and I did both. And we had some kids in preschool, and I was still teaching. So formally, I was a public school, high school English teacher. And then when we moved to Idaho, we're currently Texas. We moved all over the place, but we live in Texas now. But we moved to Idaho. The state there is very open to homeschooling, and it's not kind of a fringe oddity. Lots of people do it. And I really dislike teaching. I mean, I really dislike teaching. And I didn't want to relicense, but it's hard for me not to feel productive. And so one of the problems I had being a stay at home dad was just not feeling like I was doing enough. Like I had to get out and farm something or build something, or in addition to taking care of the kids. That's actually a kind of a male thing I've noticed with the men that I talk to. That's the real gap for them, is that, like, I'm thinking I'm supposed to be doing something else,
Right.
in
Yeah.
addition to taking care of the kids. And so I really started homeschooling as sort of a therapy for me, and also as a sort of a preventative measure for my kids, based on what I was seeing in the public school system.
Sure.
And so, it was a 1 year at a time thing back then. There was a conviction for us to do it, but there was definitely, I wasn't sure how it was going to work out because I'm a guy, and
Okay.
I could see right away I was going to be lonely in this job,
Yeah.
right? But every year it got a little better, and I mean, I wouldn't do it any other way now. So
Sure, yeah. So what are some things, I guess, that you, as a dad, I know, like, when I show up, and I've heard you talk about this, like, if you show up at a homeschooling event, like we had one earlier today, and my wife, we both work from home, but she was like, yeah, I'm going, you can come, but you'll be the only guy there. And I was like, I think I'm going to skip this one. But what have been some ways that you found to kind of like overcome that? Or are you just kind of getting more comfortable with being just the dude with a whole bunch of other moms?
well, I don't know. Those opportunities don't present themselves very often. So here's when they do. The years that we've been part of co-ops, that's always been hard for me because, I want to find community just like everybody else wants to find their community. There just aren't a lot of dads in this particular profession.
Right.
And so, there's usually a little bit of discomfort there because, the moms will always have, like, movie night, and then they'll go out and get drinks after, or whatever it is that they're doing.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then they have to remind me, you can't go.
Right.
So it's like everyone else but you. So you'll need to stay here. And that's okay. I don't know that I would go anyway because it would just seem it would seem a little weird, but
Right.
knowing that sort of glass barrier is there, Like I'm
Yeah.
doing all the stuff, right? I'm teaching the classes and
Right.
but I just can't be part of the actual community, which you really do have to develop sort of a thick skin, I
Yeah.
think, for that, and just understand that this is the way it is, and
Yeah.
find your community elsewhere, which is what I've had to kind of do.
So what kind of community have you found elsewhere? So outside of the homeschooling world, is that what you're
Right,
saying?
right. I
Yeah.
don't do a lot in the community. I do. I'm active on the internet, right,
Yeah.
on social media, and I think I told this story in this video. I met a friend of mine off of Facebook, and I want to say we were in Idaho. It was like 5 years ago or so, and I this kind of trepidation, like I want to go up and talk to this lady, and there's somebody I converse with regularly when issues would pop up, and we always kind of clicked. And I said, "Hey, I'm going to say hi." I knew her from her profile picture, right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of thought, okay, this is weird. I got the kids in the cart, and I'm always thinking, like, as a husband, what's the right thing to do as a husband? And so, but I finally just went up and said hi, and she looked at me and she goes, "That's weird because I really thought you were a woman." And it didn't occur to me because, a lot of times, especially on Christian pages, like the husbands and wives will post together and they'll
Right.
say,
Yeah.
Rob and Jane Smith or whatever like that. And so she always just assumed I was just another homeschool mom.
Yeah.
So if there was any way to really encapsulate kind of the weirdness that comes along with being
Yeah.
male in this job, that was it for me.
Yeah. That
So
that was
anyway, my point was I found community through my church,
okay.
and I do it started as sort of an impromptu ministry where I was helping guys who were stay-at-home dads.
Okay.
And I found that, and it was hard to find them because they won't, men won't reach out in the
Right.
same way that women do. And I know this, I don't know if we can say this stuff anymore, but I think that's still pretty universal, right?
Yeah.
And we're still pretty quiet and we'll still kind of keep to ourselves. And if we're doing this job, we're just kind of punish ourselves by not getting out there and finding a way to connect with other men. And I
Yeah.
kept finding all these guys that were legitimately depressed, right? That were staying home and it was becoming a punishment for them. And that's the way that, when we communicate, especially the men who are first year dads with infants,
Hmm.
those guys really struggled,
Oh yeah.
and women do too. But really, there was a unique struggle, I think, for men because they really were having a hard time figuring out how they connected in this piece, right? Right. There are a lot of physical things that we can't do with the infant that the
Right.
mother would.
Yeah.
And so
Yep.
it's already weird. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's where I found it. And I've really, met a lot of people this way and found a lot of connection.
So kind of more like away from the homeschool, but kind of looking at more like for somebody else out there in the same kind of position, looking maybe for like stay-at-home dads groups would
Mhm.
be
Yeah.
somewhere. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think a lot. I think for men, I've kind of realized that men, for a little while, especially when you start staying home, your identity is wrapped up in your occupation. So when you like pull that occupation away, all of a sudden men are kind of like, what's my value?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's a challenging spot to be in for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah. So what kind of bringing it back to homeschooling? What kind of homeschooling do you do now? Do you have like a particular style?
Yeah. We've kind of made it up as we go.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I really tried hard not to. I think I fell into the same probably pitfalls that most homeschool parents do. I spent way too much time in the beginning researching curriculum.
Hmm.
And I knew I didn't want to just buy something out of the box because I had that teacher in me. And I thought, well, I can construct anything that they need to do. But then I would fall into the trap, right, of, well, what's the best math curriculum? And
Right.
looking on Facebook or something. And then it turned into weeks of just, him hawing around trying to decide what the right direction would be. So, but it took me a year or so to kind of get over that. And now we're pretty eclectic. I don't really have a label for you, but we're
Yeah.
eclectic.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
Some things that are not at all traditional. I've talked about this. I think I did a scheduling thing on
That was going to be my next question. Yes, I'd love for you to kind of explain what you do for our listeners as far as kind of your scheduling, because I think that's a little bit
yeah,
unique.
yeah. This one kind of leads into the other here. So we school 7 days a week, and when I say that though, it's difficult because it sounds like a punishment, like we're a cult or something. It's really not. It just means that I don't devote too much time every day,
Hmm.
but I like to feel a flow. And when they were little, I noticed that they didn't really notice the difference between working on math and playing a video game. right? It was
Right.
just a thing that they did. And so over the years, we're just like, wow, it's Sunday. And they're like, I think I'm going to get an English lesson done or something, reading or something like that. I was like, okay, that's fine. And I would catch myself. I was like, I don't know, we're supposed to do that? Like, is it okay to actually school on Sunday or whatever? And my
Right.
wife's like, why not? Just do it all the time. And I
Yeah.
went, okay, that makes sense. And so now we just kind of make it part of a learning cycle. And, for my wife and I, it's like, well, we read all the time. And we're trying to, like, let's say, so now my wife's learning German, for example. And so she does this on her own 7 days a week. And so, why can't they? Right?
Right.
There's no rule that says other than the teachers unions, you can't be there more than 5 days a week.
Right.
That's really all there is to that. So yeah, so we go 7 days a week, 365, except that we take lots of breaks.
Yeah.
And I have no trepidation. We are in shooting sports here, so we have a range day, usually on Mondays.
Oh, fun.
So
Okay.
they don't really do anything. We'll go out to the range and practice something, and then they don't really start until 3 or so,
Yeah.
if they
Well,
do.
and I mean, shooting is homeschooling too. So, I mean, like,
Yeah,
that's
sure.
what I kind of tell people is it's all, we homestead. So all
Mhm.
of it, we have chores and learning how to deal with animals and animals dying and animals being
Right.
born, all of that is homeschool. And I think, when you can kind of release yourself from that, overall feeling of it has to be like sitting down at a table, homeschooling, people, there's kind of more freedom in it. We do something very similar with ours. I kind of look at homeschooling as like entrepreneurship, like we're
Mhm.
both, my wife and I both work on a business together just out of the house. And except we take Saturdays off completely. But other than that, we're working all the time. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's a great way. I never thought of that. That's a great way to put it, though, because really, this is your, that. And I know this. I don't want to go too far off, but back to kind of what we talked about in the beginning. One of the things I would tell men who are having sort of a crisis or a depression is that, especially if you look at it from a faith perspective, God doesn't care what you do; He cares that you do it well
Right.
and you invest yourself into it. So what it is just something that we've sort of constructed in our own mind. I have to go out and build a road or something. Well, no,
Right.
you can actually just teach your kids, and that's okay. That's a great
Yeah.
job. Just do it
Yeah.
really well, and so I like that idea about it being an entrepreneurial experience because that's really what it is.
Yeah. And I mean, I tell people like ultimately, if we can raise really good human beings and put them out there into the world, that like our goal of homeschool, that's our major goal of homeschooling. Like
Right.
we've accomplished the end goal of we're putting another great human being into the earth.
That's
That's,
it.
yeah.
That is it. It is exactly the goal for us. If we had any goal at the end of this, when they're 18 and they're shuffling off to whatever it is they're going to do, it
Right.
is. I want them to know right from wrong,
Yeah.
right? And I want them to not be indoctrinated into some particular position.
Right.
For that later, but just while they're in my home,
Right. Yeah.
we'll take care of that for
Yeah.
them.
What words of wisdom can you share for homeschoolers, for less confident homeschoolers? But I feel like that's it, really, is just, I don't know. Do you have anything else to add to that or?
Yeah, for me, it's changed a little bit since I've seen so many crisis schoolers kind of popping up,
Mhm.
asking for advice, and I know that there's kind of debate out there: is it crisis schooling or is it homeschooling? And it's whatever; they're all home.
Right.
And for me, it's really just to take a deep breath and not feel like you have to do too much.
Yeah.
We've taken, and that's something that I really learned teaching in the public school system was when you're shuffling through. For me, it would be 120 students a day in English classes.
Wow.
Schedules matter, right?
Right.
Well, I've got four, and one can
Yeah.
barely read. So, I mean, it's your time is on a completely different scale than what you probably learned when you were going to school yourself.
Yeah.
We've taken an entire year off at one point, and
Yeah.
all my kids are doing just fine. I mean, they will be okay, right?
Right.
This
Yeah.
time off and did nothing but read, they're going to be just fine.
Yeah. Or even just sit outside and stare at the sky. Like, I mean, that would be
Exactly.
great. Yeah.
Their world will open up in ways they never would have known possible sitting in the brick and mortar, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then lastly, what's one little thing that you make part of your homeschool routine that you think helps make the family the happiest or helps make you the happiest?
Well, not overdoing it. That's not really a routine, I guess, but it is a routine for me to remember not to stretch days too long.
Yeah.
Especially my two middle children are boys, and I treat them like boys. They are prototypical boys. They need to get up, they need to move around, they need to get out. So if there's any one thing that I do, I think we do pretty well now, it's that we spend our mornings centered around each other. And so we do devotionals, we read. My kids are my 15-year-old still does read aloud with us in the morning. And so we do those little things to center ourselves. But then throughout the day, each one of their learning times is pretty custom.
Nice.
So my boys don't work for more than about 45 minutes at a time before they go out and dig a ditch. And then they come, metaphorical ditch.
Right.
And then they come back in, right?
Yeah.
But that time in the morning for us has been the big thing, because it signals to them that it's about time to start learning.
Yeah.
And it signals to me that I need to kind of focus too. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It sounds very, very similar to how our homeschool operates too. I think that morning piece really helps kind of structure the whole day. Well, Rob, I feel like we could talk for hours, but I think I'm going to cut it off here. I really appreciate your time. Everybody, you can check out Rob at The Circus Dad on Instagram. Rob, is there anywhere else people should go to connect with you? And
Sure. Circus Dad, The Circus Dad on Instagram. Circusdad.com is the blog website, or blog address. And it's also Circus Dad on Facebook.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Hey, you bet. Thank you.
Yeah.